Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I invite you just to make any adjustments you need to make in your seat. If you could be even 5% more comfortable than you are right now, just making any adjustments, ensuring your back feels comfortable. That's it. Beautiful. Okay, so if you didn't get a chance to read the blurb about today's session, I'm just going to read it for you now. So this session is for those of us who wish to be more present, but find it challenging to still our minds and bodies. It's for those of us whose nervous systems are more familiar with the flight response of the nervous system. And what I want to do today is, rather than work against that impulse, I want to work with that flight response and help it. So we're going to do some breath phases. We're going to do some gentle arm movements. And this will all make sense a little bit more later as we go along. And then we're going to do a little somatic awareness exercise. So I'll start by just prefacing the practice that the intention for today is to connect to our bodies. And sometimes that phrase can sound a little bit elusive. So I'm going to do my best today to introduce ways in which we can connect to our bodies. And there's no right or wrong way. We're all so beautifully unique. And whatever comes up for you is perfect for you. And if there's any part of this practice that doesn't feel quite right for you, you can sit out and I'll hopefully remember to offer alternatives as we go along. So we're going to start by doing a nice introductory breath, and I'll just explain that before we do it. So we'll breathe in through our nose. And if we feel like we might like to, we can breathe out with the sound of shh, as though we're quieting someone. We're in a library. So we're going to start by breathing in through our nose when you're ready. And I'm just noticing how that breath felt in your body, if that had a nice soothing effect. And you continue to breathe that way if you wish. So I invite you now to just put your hands on your pulse, your fingers on your pulse, whether you want to do that on your wrist or on your neck. We're just going to connect to our heart's pulse for a moment. Just taking a moment to feel our pulse, the pace of our pulse. Whether we're maybe a little surprised by the pace of it. Maybe it feels faster than we thought. Maybe slower. And I invite you to just acknowledge in this moment all that your heart does for you, just by feeling this pulse. And if there are any feelings of gratitude that arise in this acknowledgement, just allow yourself to embody, to feel that gratitude. We can perhaps park this feeling of gratitude to the side. If we want to return to it at any point throughout the practice, we can come back to our heart. We can feel our pulse. This can be an anchoring point should you need it at any time. So you might like to continue holding your pulse, or you can gently rest your hands in your lap, whatever feels comfortable for you. I'm going to just talk a little bit about somatic awareness. For those of us who aren't familiar with somatic awareness, I like to describe it as these two levels in our body, and I'm pointing to my head and upwards as being the cognitive level of awareness, our cognitive awareness, and our somatic awareness perhaps being underneath that. Our cognitive awareness speaks to us in beliefs, in thoughts, in the narrative, the story, the images, the sound bites, whereas our somatic awareness speaks to us in sensation. And that sensation can be hot, cold, can be tight or loose, soft. These are all sensory words. There might be tingling, might be, what we call butterflies in our stomach. This is the language of our body. And it's the language that we don't often hear so often. It's our awareness is mostly in our mind. So my practice today is to gently invite us down into our somatic awareness, because it doesn't really get a lot of airtime. And I want to also preface that it is tricky to stay with our somatic awareness. We might only be with it for one moment before we slip back up into our mind, kind of like a reverse slippery dip. This goes back up again and we go back into the realm of thought. I want to normalize this experience as being perfectly okay. And we can just gently bring our awareness back to our somatic awareness once again. So there's a little dance between these two levels of self-awareness that we're going to explore today. And I'll go into the purpose of this in a moment. But since this meditation today is about helping the flight response of the nervous system release from the body, I'm going to ask you to think of the last time you felt like you might have been in flight. And that might look like feeling like you were rushed, feeling like you had to do more, feeling like there was lots to do and you couldn't get to it. Perhaps you were tidying the house. Perhaps you had about 10 tabs open on your computer and feeling like you had to get to all of them. You might have a different example than one of the ones I've mentioned, but I invite you to go there. It might have been today, it might have been this week. And just bringing to mind that memory of being in flight and noticing how you feel in your body using this language of sensation. Do you notice perhaps your breath change? Do you notice maybe your heart rate changing a little bit? Do you feel some tightness in your body? This is all wonderful. And I invite you just to notice that, perhaps even putting your hand over the space where you feel that sensation. But again, if you don't feel anything, that's okay too. Just noticing that story in your mind. If you can visualize that, if you can't visualize that, that's all right as well. I'm just going to take a moment to pause as we just gently explore, what does this flight response feel like when I'm busy, when I'm in a rush, when I feel like I need to do, when I'm doing rather than being, maybe not feeling like enough and doing lots. These trigger our flight response. Sometimes it can feel fast, like we want to move. So noticing if that arises for you, how that feels in your body. For me, I can notice my heart rate going fast, my stomach tighten, just right in my solar plexus, it feels very tight. So as I describe this experience, the story, the cognitive level of awareness is, I need to do more. I need to get this done. There's not enough time. This is the level of awareness that we're most familiar with. And it's very subjective. There's a subjectivity to that narrative, and it has an emotional weight to it. With the somatic awareness, it's very objective. It's hot or cold, tight, heavy, tingly. These are unemotive words for the most part. And so it's the process, and coming back to the reason that we're doing this, is to put a comma, to put a pause, a full stop perhaps, in that trail of thought and being carried away with the story coming into the body. Offers a moment's respite to the mind, a comma on that trail of thinking, even if we do get pulled back again and the next sentence starts. So just taking a moment now taking a breath, perhaps. I've been talking for a little while. I'm just coming back to our bodies again, noticing this level of awareness. Some people say, I can't stop thinking. I feel like I'm thinking and ruminating. That's this coming into our somatic level of awareness, puts a comma or a pause on our thinking, because we can't think and feel at the same time. So there's a little dance that happens between the two, and I invite you to notice that through the course of what we do today. If you do feel some flight in your nervous system as you think of this moment you had when you were feeling flight, whether it was this morning, this week, last week, as you think about it in this moment and you notice that flight in your body, we're just going to utilize that in this moment. So as I said, for me, I feel tightness in my stomach and my heart racing a little bit. So the next part of this meditation, we're going to move our arms in time with our breath. So I'll just do a little demonstration before we get started. I'm going to breathe in through our nose and then out through our mouth. And what this does is allows that mobilizing energy of the flight response to discharge. If we look to nature, we see that the flight response in animals is discharged by them running away. But sometimes we might be sitting in a car and we can't actually release those mobilizing hormones. So they get a bit stuck in our body. So as I said at the beginning, we're going to work with that mobilizing energy in this moment rather than against it. So that flight energy wants to come out. And so what we're going to do is just allow it to come out through some movement. It's going to be gentle. And in your time, in your breath phase, what feels right for you, you breathe in as your arms go up and out as your arms go down. Beautiful. And should I have mentioned that if there isn't room around you, you can do your cactus arms instead. That's beautiful. Just honoring your pace of breath. You might start to notice a little bit of warmth building up in your biceps and your deltoids. That's it. It can be hard to sit still when we're in flight. And this is a gentle way to remain seated, but help that flight energy discharge from our bodies, from our nervous systems, that adrenaline, that cortisol. There we go. That's it. And now we're going to, on the next round, move our arms outward, like we're opening up for a hug. And we bring it in as though we are hugging ourselves. And that might be you putting your hands on your shoulders or tucking your hand under your arm so it holds your rib cage. You're holding your torso and just noticing how that feels. I'm just going to rest my head on my hand because that feels nice. Beautiful. Noticing how that feels, how that flight energy feels in your body. Making contact with your body to be with it rather than try and escape it. And on our next inhalation, we're going to bring our arms out again when you're ready. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay where you are. And in again. Perhaps swapping our arms over. That's it. Letting out a sigh if you need to. You may notice that I'm rocking from side to side. If your eyes are open, if this feels right for you, you can do the same. Noticing how it feels to hold yourself in this way. Be there for yourself in this flight energy. Bring safety to that feeling. Perhaps noticing the growing warmth in the contact between arm and body. Releasing your arms at any point that feels right, otherwise just staying exactly where you are. We've taken a little journey through the flight response of the nervous system, and we've allowed our bodies to release some of that. And where we're landing now is we're going to hold an acupressure point on our wrist. And if you wish to keep your eyes closed, I can describe it. Otherwise, you can watch. So we've got 3 finger widths down from the wrist crease underneath your palm. And in between the 2 tendons, there is an acupressure point. It's called Neguan, which translates as inner pass. And the pericardium is the sac around the heart, the protective layer. And that's both physical and emotional and energetic. So just gently resting your hands in your lap. And we're just going to give that a gentle rub at this point here. There's no right or wrong amount of time to hold this point, and both arms have the point. So whichever side works well. And we're going to continue to breathe as we hold this point. This point was recently a part of a study on first responders, where they applied this point to these emergency workers and noticed the effect it had on their heart rate variability. And it was helpful. It's a beautiful point, a master point for many things: nausea and calm, sleep. So I'm just going to allow some silence now as we stay with this point for a few moments. Keeping your eyes closed if they are closed. Just noticing how you feel in your body as we segue into a somatic awareness exercise. You may wish to keep your finger, your thumb on this beautiful point on your wrist. You may even wish to swap sides. With the somatic awareness exercise, we turn our eyes inward, looking at the space between our jaw and our pelvis, our pelvic bowl. So our entire torso from our jaw down. We're going to do a little scan of that space to notice if there's any sensations, either subtle or strong, perhaps residual from before, perhaps new to this moment. And what we're looking for is any softness, hardness, tight, heavy, or loose. It might be in our jaw, our throat, our chest, our stomach, or our shoulders, or back, or hips. I invite you to scan this space now and identify if there's anything in there that you can see, feel. If there's nothing, just gently breathing in this moment with this point. Otherwise, if you notice a sensation, we're going to give it permission to be here. I'm going to breathe with that sensation. So for me, I'm going to be with this tightness in my stomach. And by getting familiar with it, by allowing it, it'll do whatever it needs to do. We don't resist it or judge it or fear it in any way. I'm just going to get to know it a little bit. Does it feel like a shape or an object? Does it have a size or a weight? There's no right or wrong with this process. Once you become a little more familiar with how that sensation feels in your body, we're just going to send it our breath. That's it. Just making space for it to be here. Our breath is allowing it. And notice as you focus on this sensation, you're not thinking, you're feeling. And as we sit here in this practice, you may notice this dance between mind and body. Perhaps your mind pulls you back to thought, maybe wondering if you're doing it right, maybe another thought. Just gently coming back to the sensation, breathing with it. Noticing what happens to it as you breathe, whether it stays the same, whether it becomes stronger or softens. Beautiful breathing. That's it. It may move, it may stay the same, it may get bigger or smaller. There's no right or wrong. Just noticing, allowing. In a moment, we're going to bring this exercise to a close. I invite you to come back to the beginning where we had our gratitude moment with our heart. Noticing how that feels in your body as a sensation. If that's accessible to you in this moment. Whether that feels light and where you feel that sensation. We've taken a journey through the nerve system, our somatic awareness, through some movement, some touch, some breathing. I invite you to inwardly thank yourself for showing up for you and your body today. You can start to notice the sounds, perhaps outside the room or inside the room. Notice the sound of your breathing. Maybe moving any parts of your body that need to move. So slowly come back to the room. Now there may be a word that came up for you in that practice, or maybe a few sentences that you wish to write down. There doesn't have to be any words, just letting them come if they do. Otherwise, just taking your time to return to this moment, the room. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Stephanie.